welcome back to another show. And today I'm going to talk about Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. As you can see, I've got the snazzy 4K edition from Arrow. In this occasion, it's like, seems absurd to get a 4K edition of a film that was made very cheaply, like 16mm, but I can't resist a 4K no matter what. So you get the film, you get the film disc, plus you get the extra disc, which is in Blu-ray, and you get basically the film on both discs, and you get baby's booklets and posters and things like that, and all the fancy things that I think you can figure out for yourself what they look like from Arrow. One of the books you get is actually a storyboard thing where all the drawings John McNaughton made before he started filming. And on the extras you get the idea that he was very prepared, but he gave the actor space as he was making the film, which comes across in the film. Now Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer was a very controversial film when released. When it was made by a company went into film making, and they had an extra $100,000 to make a film, which is not much to make a film. And they said, just as long as you get some blood and some nudity, basically, fine. We don't want to read the script. We don't care. As long as you make a film, we can sell. Which is so the producers were asking for, if they gave a director carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wanted. So what they said was, I'll make a film about a serial killer, and that sounded good to them. They let him go away with it. But they didn't realise he was making a film about a serial killer, like a realistic film. Even though it was based on the confession of Henry Lee Lucas, a serial killer who, by himself and with his partner Otis, killed many people. Thing is, he didn't really follow his life story that much. It was like the idea of Henry was much more entrancing, and they used a few names of a few people in his life, like Becky, who was his wife, and Otis. And he took certain things, like Otis was the less experienced of the two, and he was more, he had a gay side and things like that. But like the original real Otis was fully gay. In this one, he floats around. But they basically took the idea of them and then used their imagination to. So McNaughton had a screenwriter to help him out write the script, and they treated it like a documentary, but they had a progression, a character progression that slowly went through. They had dialogue, which the actors would learn, but also they would give the actor space to try things. Because they were shooting 16mm, it was not the most expensive thing, but they wanted to be efficient, but it was a case of trusting the cast. So McNaughton basically was shooting in Chicago, so he got local Chicago actors who were not well known to Hollywood. They might have had a little part here or there, but they were not well known to Hollywood, which is what gave the film a real sense of reality. Now, Michael Rooker, who played Henry, would go on to become a character actor in Hollywood films. Pretty much immediately after this film was seen by people. It was like, yep, he's good. And he was instantly, I mean, a few years later, he was in Days of Thunder, the Tom Cruise film, playing Tom Cruise's buddy, and he was in Cliffhanger and a bunch of other films, and he's, he has a few sort of fallow years, but generally he's one of those actors that works a lot and seems to always be in films. It's hard to find a James Gunn film he's not in. So he's like a regular actor in the Hollywood scene. The other two actors, less so after the film, but they were like theatre actors. Tom Tills would get some parts, but he was never really that well known after this. I mean, he was one that became a character actor, but at a lesser level than Michael Rooker. And Tracy Arnold, who played Becky, you barely didn't see much from her much after this, which is a shame because she was really good in this film. Everyone's excellent in this film. It's one of those films that's really well cast, and it focuses on those three characters. Everyone else is basically like a one-scene actor, and basically McNaughton admitted that some actors played 3 or 4 parts in different wigs because he knew they were reliable, and they could like one woman plays 3 different victims with different wigs on because McNaughton knew she could do it, and it was much easier. Do it that way. So it was one of the situations where it was a small crew, a tight crew, they had very little money, they had to budget it out properly to get what they needed. So people were not getting really paid that much for this film. and they made it over a month in Chicago. So they would go out and shoot stuff in the streets of Chicago. I don't think they had permits, but I don't think Chicago was a big filming state anyway, so they got away with it. They made a set for their interior of the apartment where a lot of the film takes place. And basically shot it like a low budget film. They just shot it like, this is what we need, this is what we're doing, and they had a plan and they just went and shot the scenes just like a non-production would. Because the subject matter, it was disturbing when Michael Rooker was apparently in character a lot, even though obviously he wasn't killing people, but it was kind of a thing where people kind of gave him space to go and be himself, because I was trying to shoot this thing really fast and you had to be able to turn it on really quickly, so it was like a difficult part. Although Rooker said when he left the set after a day's work, he could turn it off. It was one of those things where he said, it was one of the actor things where when he was there, he was on, but when he was actually, after he got home, he'd find a way to turn it off, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those low budget films that actually worked because they had no one saying, make it more commercial, make it this, make it that. And a lot of films you see in low budget, the people who are the producers want to make a commercial, so a lot of time you see like what would be a interesting idea ruined by commercial instincts, by making everything conventional character and pacing. So you've seen this film before, even though the kind of setup's a bit different, it still feels like the same film. And that's what happened a lot in the 80s, where films, even if they're interesting subject matter, they would always feel the same in the low budget era, because it was like everyone had a conventional idea of what to do. I mean, the 70s was lots of strange films being made. In the 80s it got very conventional very fast, and it became pretty tedious to watch a lot of the time, because it's like, I know where it's going. You know, the TV shows were the same, everything was the same. Essentially, when the 1990s came around, people were sick to death of seeing the same stories told the same way. And this film was one of the ones of what was like the kind of what would become the 90s filmmaking, indie filmmaking. This was like one of the early examples of where it was going to go. So, I mean, in New York, Jim Jarmusch was making films as well that was very unconventional. There was like a slow build to that. By the mid to late 80s, there was already kind of signs of people getting tired of the conventional structures. So the story itself is basically of Henry going around killing people. That's the structure for the first section of the film. Is like he's going from place to place, killing people, not simply taking much pleasure in it. You don't know why he's doing it. It never tells you why he's doing what he's doing. It's just what he does. He's just like a shark going through the landscape, killing people. If you're the right type for him, he will kill you for whatever pleasure he gets out of it. And he will stalk people to their homes and only back off if he sees if they've got a husband or someone where basically he can't physically attack. And there's too many people, he knows he can't physically do it, so he won't bother. But if the person lives alone, he will kill them. It's very creepy that way. It's a sense of be careful who you see in the street, because they may have something up. It was just a very kind of creepy feeling of this guy just driving through the streets when everyone drives through the streets, but having a purpose that's basically homicidal. So that's the first section of the film. You get the sense of who Henry is. Then in the second section, you find he's living with an ex-cellmate called Otis, who was real life Henry's real life killing partner. Although in the film, basically when they first meet them, Otis is just a guy on parole who's just a bit of a slob, but he's not a killer at that point. His sister Becky comes to live with him because his sister, she's getting divorced, and she's run away from her husband who is abusive. So she comes into this setup, and because Henry's polite and protects her from Otis, she sees that as having some sort of soul. She doesn't realise who she's actually with and what his deal is. She just doesn't get it, and it's like, because the way Michael Rooker plays it, he never gives any signs that he is a killer. He just gives the signs of someone who's quiet, who's thoughtful, who's polite. So the only sign she's got is the fact that he was in jail for killing his mother, because his story changes of how he killed her, and we all say she was abusive to him and all the rest of it. So there's a story there, but you're not quite sure if it's true or not. I mean, that's the thing that the people who made The Dark Knight obviously took this from Henry Portrait Serial Killer, this very unreliable narrator telling the story but always changing the facts. You know, it's just like, yeah, the Joker background is basically Henry. You know, the Heath Ledger Joker is basically Henry Portrait Serial Killer with, you know, more panache, but the mentality's kind of the same. Like, he's a bit crazier, but the same kind of cruelty to people and indifference to people. But Henry's much creepier because he just feels so normal. And as the story goes on, she becomes attracted to him, and he likes her, but you're never quite sure what he wants with her, and that's part of the tension throughout the middle section. She gets a job in the city and she starts to live a normal life, but Henry shows himself to be a killer in front of Otis at one point. And Otis really likes the idea of being a killer, so suddenly he starts joining in the killing. So basically, Henry can now kill more people. So the people he couldn't get at before because there was a family involved, he can now get at, which makes him more dangerous. And he can, even going and doing something like buying a TV can lead to homicide. They start filming their own murders so they can rewatch it later, and Otis becomes addicted to this. And it just becomes how everything becomes normalised in the serial killer mindset, and how it ties to the kind of mundane feeling that everyone has in daily life, like a sense of things are happening but you're doing it half-arsed, and no one's got much passion. And the way Otis and Henry act most of the time is just like the way people act. Like Otis acts like a buffoon who's, you know, a bit of a bully, and obviously he's attracted to young men, but he doesn't know how to deal with it. And Henry seems a very polite guy, and it's like, but they're working in jobs that are unsatisfying, and they're not very happy with their life, and it just feels like a normal drama, except they kill people. And that seems to be McNaughton's point, is that these people are not that different from us. They've just got something else in their head that's just there. And that's why it doesn't really matter if it's based on fact or not. I mean, it's based on the stories Henry told when he was arrested. But it doesn't matter if they're true or not, because the film wasn't trying to see this as the factual story of Henry anyway. It's much more about what he is, or what kind of character he is, and how he sees people. But not by explaining it, it's just like how he behaves, and how you can misread signals, and how in real life you can misread signals in horrible ways. It's like, why does people get into bad marriages? It's like they misread the signals of a person, even if they're telling them exactly what they are, they'll still misread it. And other times they're hidden, and it's like, so it ties more to life, you think, and then suddenly murders happen, and it's like, in a very dispassionate way the murders happen. It's just like, that happened. It's not like a Dario Argento like mega murder. It's just not that. It's just like very basic, and Henry gets some satisfaction from murdering, but you never know what it is. Now, the most controversial scene in the film is that when they do a house raid attack in Chicago, and they murder the husband, and Otis starts to rape the wife while we're going to murder her. Then the son walks in, and Henry's been filming at the time. He puts in the camera and kills the son, and then they kill the wife. And then you pull back to see the way you're watching the film on TV, which is a creepy moment. It's just like implicating you in the kind of same kind of voyeurism and the same kind of bored apathy of watching these murders taking place, which you've been doing for the last like hour. And it's like, yeah, how, you know, this is human nature in a way you don't want to admit. And they're doing things like 90% of the time they're doing stuff just like everyone else. And it's that other 10% that's the scary part. So that's what the film really works well with, is this sense of tying it to the real world in a way that most film serial killers aren't interested in, because it makes it more disturbing. Like, serial killers tend to work better if you can tie them to something you recognise. When they become a fantasy figure, they're less scary. That's more ridiculous serial killers just to get no fishing, really, as like villains. I mean, even something like Hannibal Lecter, the reason why it works is Thomas Harris wrote it well, so there's a sense of this guy is a really smart guy and a serial killer. But a lot of the kind of imitators didn't do it well. But Henry's one of those films that understand that most serial killers are just dull people. This is just their thing. But there's nothing interesting about it, it's just their thing. There's nothing interesting about the Ed Gein or anything else. It's just like, it's their thing. We're over analysing it. They're just creeps. And there's too many of them in real life, but there's probably less than you'd think. But there's still enough to make it difficult. And there's always probably been them, and there always will be them. And they're created out of genetics, they're created out of apathy, and they're created out of something wrong in their brain. There's a whole mix of reasons why they be. The film goes darker later on, where Otis tries to rape his own sister, and Henry kills him. And then Becky sees that Henry is a saviour, but obviously he's not, which leads to a very dark ending for her. And it's done really subtly, so it makes it more creepier. And like, McNaughton knows what he's doing. It's like, the less you do, the more people can understand and put their own interpretation into it, and it can be much creepier if you don't overtly do things. You just like let them see the aftermath or something, and they can understand the rest themselves. Henry's just a wonderful film, but it is creepy, and it's aged really well, because it's even though the fashions are different now, the same sense of like urban squalor is still there in the streets. The same sense of despair in the people are still there. The same sense of this kind of lack of ambition and people barely surviving leads to like dark impulses is still there. And the idea that things can be missed quite easily. People can go around killing people quite easily, and you would never know. So Henry's a wonderful film. I'd highly recommend it. The arrow set's terrific. I mean, there's only so much they can do with what they've got, because the film is intentionally meant to be very basic in style, and it's done 16mm. There's only so much you can blow up with this kind of thing. But the fact is, with the 4K, you can get all the details very clearly, and it works really well. It's just, you just got to accept what the thing is. You know, and Henry's creepier because it's very basic. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you go and try and get the Arrow 4K if you've got a 4K machine, because it is worth the 4K. Even though it's not like pristine, it's just for the details. You see much more of the details, and the set's terrific, really. So go see it. That's me for now. Right, bye.